Identity is what separates us from others. It takes many shapes and sizes and is formed by our memories, experiences, relationships, values, and when put together, it creates one sense of self. Our identities are constantly changing and evolving every day, whether through getting older or finding your true passion in life. This is especially true during one's adolescent years, where questions such as who am I and who do I want my future self to be start to pop up. Answering these questions is already complicated enough without adding external factors such as upholding one's reputation and social influences. Where does that leave one who has a heroic reputation and holds the weight of many lives on their shoulders? We can find that person as Subaru in ReZero Arc 6, but he's different this time. Subaru lost all of his memories of this parallel world that he was summoned to, and the last thing he remembers is being at a convenience store. To prevent any sort of confusion, I will be referring to the Subaru as Subaru. I will be referring to the Subaru with all of his memories intact as Natsuki Subaru. Natsuki Subaru had been building quite the name for himself up to this point. From going to a brash, scrawny simp to the Giga Chad who took down Sloth, the White Whale, the Great Rabbit, and saving Priscilla. Natsuki Subaru suffered a lot, was knocked down multiple times, and was able to get back up with the help of his friends. Now imagine if you took Natsuki Subaru as soon as he stepped foot into Lagunica and put him into a tower where he's expected to help conquer it and find a way to save countless people. Doesn't seem fair, does it? It isn't, but that is the situation Subaru's put in the moment he wakes up in the green room. However, it's an interesting place to take Subaru's character. Typically, the cliché of amnesia is often used as a gag or a plot device and doesn't further deepen the characters or the plot. Except with Subaru's amnesia, we learn more about Subaru himself. With Natsuki Subaru losing his memories, we're quite literally starting from zero, except much later on in the story. Just like Natsuki Subaru's first day in a parallel world, Subaru's first day is not peachy and is rather a lot more brutal. Subaru was overwhelmed that these strangers cared about him and thought the world of him. To Subaru, he was still the ungrateful, lazy son who would skip school. Subaru feels a lot of guilt as he has not changed and is very blessed to have this much help in a parallel world. Just like Natsuki Subaru, Subaru assumed that he must have been blessed with some incredible powers, but found out very quickly that he was very weak. Subaru could not use the whip on his belt and hit himself when he tried to use it. Out of concern for Subaru, Amelia and the others left him alone in the green room while they tried to figure out how to solve the tower's trials. While Subaru knew they had good intentions, he couldn't help but feel like he was made out of paper mache, but before he could dwell on it much longer, he was pushed from the staircase and fell several stories to his death, where he would discover his only power, Return by Death. Return by Death has been a critical part of Natsuki Subaru's success and suffering. This is still the same for Subaru. Here we start seeing Subaru wonder how Natsuki Subaru used this power and why he has never revealed it to anyone. Subaru starts seeing Natsuki Subaru as a different person entirely, and he starts developing a distrust for Natsuki Subaru. This doesn't help when Subaru gets pushed down from the stairs again, causing him to not trust anyone and frantically try to find a way to stop his suffering. When Subaru returns to the checkpoint after falling to his death again, he goes mad the same way Natsuki Subaru did in Arc 3, unable to form words and running away from his problems. Subaru starts to break down into tears, cursing himself for not saying goodbye to his parents and that he deserved to die. However, a dark shadow started to form in front of Subaru and pointed at him while smiling. It was a familiar face, but Subaru couldn't put a name to it. He started to scream at the shadow to stop laughing at him. I think it's interesting that a shadow of someone familiar is laughing at Subaru, but we'll come back to that later. Subaru's death count starts piling up and he's getting more and more cornered. Subaru, tired of the constant suffering, grabs a large knife to kill the killer. Subaru has a twisted smile on his face, but he doesn't notice the tears of fear coming out. Subaru's confidence is all but shattered when he stumbles upon the corpses of Shala, Julius, Ram, Echidna, and Meili. Subaru begins vomiting all over the place. He then recalls how he's never been to a funeral before. Subaru is so scared and isolated when he sees Patrash, the first thing alive in a while. He stabs her for trying to get close to him. Subaru breaks down. He screams that he will deny everyone who tries to depend on him. He's sick and tired of people trying to push their own agendas on him, and he doesn't care what they think. He's tired of needing to be Natsuki Subaru. But despite this, Patrash, out of love for Subaru, sacrifices herself to save Subaru from the shadows engulfing the tower. Subaru was shocked by Patrash's love for him, but he couldn't dwell on it as a figure from behind decapitates him. Arc 6 introduces a new plot device, the Books of the Dead. The Books of the Dead are unique books found in the third floor library of the Pleiades Watchtower. They allow the reader to experience the memories and life of the person whose name is on the title up to their final moments. The Books of the Dead start taking a more significant role halfway through Arc 6 when Subaru, possessed by Lewis, strangles Mei-Lee to death. Subaru wakes up with scratch marks and Natsuki Subaru was here carved into his flesh. Naturally, Subaru freaks out as he did not want to kill Mei-Lee and the others will eventually find out. Subaru quickly hides the body and tries to cover up any evidence that will lead back to him. Unfortunately for Subaru, Beatrice finds Mei-Lee's Book of the Dead. Subaru agrees to read the Book of the Dead, that way he could continue to cover up Mei-Lee's death. This is where Subaru discovers firsthand one of the drawbacks of the Books of the Dead. After Subaru finishes experiencing Mei-Lee's life and wakes up, he starts to hear Mei-Lee's voice inside of his head. Mei-Lee starts mocking Subaru and becomes a representation of his dark inner thoughts. Subaru still did not trust anyone, but after reading Mei-Lee's Book of the Dead, he could discover everyone's true intentions by reading their Books of the Dead. Murdering the others started to become a more appealing idea to Subaru. Subaru starts to plan out how he would murder the others, but before he could do that, he had to get rid of Mei-Lee's body before the others eventually find it. Natsuki Subaru, the hero who saved many, had become Subaru, the malicious wannabe Natsuki Subaru. Ram had noticed right away that Subaru had been acting very strange as she catches Subaru red-handed trying to move Mei-Lee's corpse. A worthless excuse of Barsu, of Natsuki Subaru. Those words pierced Subaru's heart more deeply than Ram could know. Subaru assumed that he had been set up, as Mei-Lee's body was no longer here. Subaru tries to play dumb to throw off any suspicion. Ram did not have any of it and continued to hammer in how much of a fake he was. Subaru lost his cool. He charged at Ram to bash her head into the wall until she was dead. But Subaru was stopped by Amelia as an ice prison formed around him. Amelia didn't want to believe that Subaru was potentially a fake. Despite the evidence against Subaru, Amelia still defended Subaru. No, she was protecting Natsuki Subaru. Natsuki Subaru cared about his friends. He would be willing to sacrifice his life for them. Time and time again, he would never think about harming them. Amelia begged Ram not to torture Subaru to find out where the real Subaru and Mei-Lee were. But her pleas fall on deaf ears as Ram launches magic at Subaru, knocking him out instantly. When Subaru wakes up, he notices that his shoulder is dislocated, and Natsuki Subaru was carved all over the walls. He is then freed by Reed, who also puts his shoulder back into place. Once Subaru stepped out, he saw all the chaos and destruction going on. He sees Julius fighting for his life against a horde of mob beasts. Julius's final words for Subaru are for him to protect Echidna and Anastasia on his behalf. Subaru sprinted up the stairs looking for Echidna. He eventually finds Beatrice and Echidna, but they're attacked by a giant scorpion. The scorpion brutally kills Beatrice and Echidna in front of him. Subaru's left broken. They had protected Subaru with their very last breath. He doubted them and even wanted to kill them. Subaru wanted to die. He was worthless. His entire life was meaningless. He troubled everyone with his existence alone. His parents, Amelia, Beatrice, Patrash, Ram, Rem, Shala, Julius, Echidna. He had failed them all. Subaru was utterly worthless as he wished to die for good. He was ready to drown in the dark shadows for all of eternity, but a voice, just like a silver bell, chimed. Amelia, who had saved Natsuki Subaru on his first day in Lagunica, saved Subaru from the shadows by pulling him out. Subaru was confused about why Amelia wanted to save him, the fake Natsuki Subaru. Subaru had betrayed everything that Natsuki Subaru stood for. Why couldn't they just leave him alone to die? He was drowning in self-blame and self-doubt, but he went quiet once he heard Amelia speak up. Amelia recalled how Subaru saved her at the loot house and asked him if he remembered their first meeting. Subaru shook his head as those weren't his memories but Natsuki Subaru's. Amelia continued explaining how Subaru had helped her out so much and how he made a promise to her. Subaru was tired of hearing about the great Natsuki Subaru. Amelia and the others wanted Natsuki Subaru back. They didn't need Subaru. Subaru screamed at Amelia, asking them who are they talking about. He didn't believe that he could put his life on the line for someone else. There was no way Natsuki Subaru was that kind of guy. Subaru continues to curse how weak, dumb, and useless he really is. Amelia cuts Subaru off and stares him right in his eyes. "My name is Amelia. Just Amelia. Please, let me hear your name." Subaru was left speechless. For once, someone in this world looked at him for who he was, not as Natsuki Subaru. Subaru was not the smartest or strongest guy around, but he was still wanted by Amelia and the others. Amelia confirms this as she tells Subaru that she wouldn't want anyone else to be by her side but him and him alone. Amelia, almost effortlessly and with a single phrase, restored Subaru's confidence as he proudly declared his name. "I am Natsuki Subaru." Unfortunately, right after this, the floor beneath them would crumble as Subaru and Amelia held one another as they fell into the deep, dark abyss. Subaru vowed to kill Subaru and bring Natsuki Subaru back to everyone. Before Subaru could complete his goal of killing Subaru and returning Natsuki Subaru, he would die several more times, slowly but surely fracturing the confidence Amelia gave him. In one of the loops, Subaru discovered that Natsuki Subaru had his memories eaten when he read Reed's Book of the Dead. In Reed's Book of the Dead, Subaru comes face to face with Louis Arneb, who stole Natsuki Subaru's memories and created Subaru. Louis mocks Subaru and wonders if he knows that he will die if Natsuki Subaru were to come back. At that moment, all of Subaru's confidence vanished. He recalled every single death he had experienced so far. He did not want to die. He did not want to disappear. He wanted to be with everyone because he loved them. Just like when Natsuki Subaru had been at his breaking point for the first time, Rem appeared in front of Subaru, telling him to stand up and that he was her hero. Thanks to Rem's words, Subaru awakened Corleones for a strong desire to be with everyone he loves. It completely shocks Louis, who had been watching Subaru talk to himself. She mentions that Subaru and Natsuki Subaru were so close to splitting apart and becoming different people. After Subaru finished reading Reed's Book of the Dead, he continued to try and save everyone in the tower, but he failed over and over again. The dark shadow of Natsuki Subaru hung over and haunted him. Had it been the true Natsuki Subaru, he would have already saved the day. Subaru starts slamming his hand against the floor, cursing his powerlessness. He had activated Corleones like usual, but this time he felt it drawing him towards a Book of the Dead. It was the Book of the Dead of Natsuki Subaru. Natsuki Subaru had an inferiority complex way before he came to Lagunica, but it only got worse as he started to create a heroic reputation for himself. So many people expected great things from Natsuki Subaru, but he always felt that he wasn't worthy of that praise. Because of this, Natsuki Subaru felt even more pressure to be the hero that everyone wanted. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? I think it's extremely poetic that Tappei had Subaru live in Natsuki Subaru's shadow. Throughout Arc 6, Subaru is constantly compared to Natsuki Subaru, whether that be Natsuki Subaru with his memories or the great Natsuki Subaru that everyone adores. Subaru is constantly told how incredible Natsuki Subaru is and how much he's done for everyone. Even Rom calls him a worthless impression of Natsuki Subaru. Subaru clearly suffers from living in Natsuki Subaru's shadow. He's constantly jealous of him, he always feels worthless and unwanted, which are common traits from those who live in envy of another. That's why when Subaru saw a smiling shadow laughing at him, he hated it. It was as if Natsuki Subaru's shadow was looking down at him while he struggled in vain. To find out why Natsuki Subaru was so beloved, Subaru read Natsuki Subaru's Books of the Dead, hoping to understand him. But unfortunately, Subaru found out that Natsuki Subaru was the exact same as him. He struggled just as much as Subaru and he was as useless as he was. While Subaru was desperately trying to piece together why Natsuki Subaru wasn't superhuman, he looked up to see Natsuki Subaru standing right in front of him. Subaru was extremely confused to see Natsuki Subaru after all this time and then asked why he showed up now. Natsuki Subaru sighs and explains that it was because Subaru had finally caught up to him. It was because he read Natsuki Subaru's Books of the Dead. Subaru wasn't having any of it, as he grabbed Natsuki Subaru by the collar. He wanted to know how Natsuki Subaru could use Return by Death to solve his problems and save everyone. Natsuki Subaru goes quiet before giving the reason behind his success. "I love everyone, that's why I can't stop. The position you were put in, to be honest, even imagining its difficulty is rough. Everything is completely new, starting from level 6, having the status of the initial stage without the option of going back. The complaints you voice out to, I understand all of them, because those are wounds I have gotten to taste time and time again." So far, every time Natsuki Subaru got knocked down, someone else always picked him back up, whether that be Rem, Otto, or Amelia. But here we see Natsuki Subaru picking up Subaru. Natsuki Subaru understands what Subaru is going through as he went through it himself. They start to talk about their experiences in this parallel world as they slowly begin to understand one another. Since their memories will join together after this conversation, they entrust everything to each other and thank one another, before shaking hands and bringing back Natsuki Subaru to completion. From there, Natsuki Subaru saved Amelia and the others from the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, Shala, and the Maw Beast. It's honestly fascinating how Tappei was able to turn a cliché trope such as amnesia and use it to further explore Subaru's character. Subaru struggled with an identity crisis the whole time. Subaru was also under extreme stress and was experiencing personal conflict by questioning how he was expected to do such great things. Subaru was trying to search for meaning in his own existence and felt that he was a fraud of Natsuki Subaru. Subaru failed countless times and died more at one checkpoint than Natsuki Subaru. Natsuki Subaru was able to start as a level 1 and level up slowly, while Subaru was thrown to the sharks and expected to survive as a level 1. Subaru was able to bring back Natsuki Subaru and was able to live up to the high expectations placed upon him. Subaru is not a nobody. He truly was Natsuki Subaru, Amelia's knight and a hero respected by many, physically and mentally. Subaru's character arc and journey of finding his identity was my favorite part of Arc 6 by far. I genuinely loved the heart-to-heart conversation he had with himself. Subaru was finally honest with himself and with Natsuki Subaru. He could never be truly honest with anyone because of Return by Death's taboo, but for Subaru to finally talk about it with someone who has literally been in his shoes not only breaks him, but breaks me as well. Thank you for watching, and please look out for my next big video, which will be the Gluttony of, where murder becomes a habit for Subaru to satisfy his obsession of bringing Natsuki Subaru back.